So I'm with the USDA Northwest Climate Hub. The Climate Hubs are an interagency organization that are led by the Forest Service. So I'm a Forest Service employee. They're also led by the Agricultural Research Service, which is not here in Alaska, as well as NRCS. So we're an agency. We're working together. It also gets a lot of funding and support from other USDA agencies. So we point to a lot of their programs, and me as coordinator, many times I'm like an information desk, and then I know a little bit and I can direct you kind of which program to go to, which agency to go to, but you need to chat with those folks to get the details and the eligibilities and the background information. So thank you, Shelby, for coming. So go see Shelby. You can tell you all about the Farm Service Agency programs, which are one of our agencies, along with Risk Management Agency, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, APHIS, Animal Plant Health Service. Like there's something else in there. Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, and a number of other USDA agencies support and work with the climate hubs. I'm based in Oregon, but we serve Alaska along with Idaho, Oregon, and Washington. And before I continue on with that, I forgot I wanted to take a step back. And so we heard from Brian today and saw, though this general region has pretty good weather stations or numbers, but obviously there are still huge gaps and still places that could use more data. And even places where there are good long-term data stations, it's helpful to have things like COCORAS, the Community Collaborative Intel Snow Network, because then they can have a sense, particularly when drawing the drought maps, like, where did that storm stop? Where was that line? So it might have gone right over the weather station, awesome, but where was that edge? And where can we start thinking about areas that got a little bit less precipitation because the storm didn't make it to that area? And so COCORAS is really helpful with that. And so this is the official COCORAS rain gauge that you can get if you wanted to. You're able to mount it. There's a little online tutorial. And I'll just take this up so you can see what it looks like. The inner tube holds an inch of rain, and then this whole container will hold 11 inches of rain. So for you all, you almost don't have to empty it once a year. No, you're supposed to do it on a daily basis. You're supposed to do it on a daily basis. What did you get each day? Whereas, you know, when I chatted with Southeast, we had to talk about different strategies of how to empty this out at some of their rain periods and if they were going to be gone for long periods of time. But you would consistently, they request that you can do it like before 8 a.m. and then it will show up on their map, and you can log in information via a computer or an app on your phone. And then if you do it before 8 a.m., a little dot will appear, and then you can see based on other people that are observing, like, how much rain did I get? And I'm always amazed, you know, I do this myself. Folks in my area, like, oh, and it's not a competition, but it's like, oh, did I win? Did I get a little bit more rain? Did I not? I missed out. Look, they got it all over there. So I enjoy it from that aspect. And then, and I believe you're right, Kendra, that after you've observed for a year, then other data systems pull it in, will show. So there's like, there's an online tool that, so those figures that Brian was showing with the green line and the brown line that showed normal. We don't get normal for a while because you got to collect data for a long time before normal shows up, but at least we'll show you the past years that you have collected data. And so you can see how much is accumulated for you and your site. And so that could be helpful for your farming to go, how much did I get? Sometimes your memory is going, oh, no, it's been super long. And then I look back and go, oh, no, it actually hasn't been that long. It just happened to be a hot day or something else that my perception wasn't accurate to how much precipitation we received. So with that, I didn't know if anybody is interested in becoming a COCORAS observer. I have 2 of these to give away, as well as a number of snow rulers. Ooh, super exciting. And so yes, if you're interested, let me know. I can send you where the training is, so you know where to download, if you want to download the app to your phone or just use the web browser, either way, and then how to log the information. The one thing I don't do the snow because I live in Western Oregon where we predominantly just get rain. So this is like, you know, I'm down here, you know, we don't, it's, you know, not worth it. I just let it melt and bring it inside and I let it melt. And that's what I measure is the snow water equivalent. My COCORAS rain gauge. So folks are interested in that. Again, I would love to not take this back with me. So if you're interested in doing that, and I'm an observer. I'm sorry, Kendra volunteering. Kendra's a noted observer as well. So if you want to know, it's not that bad. If you go on vacation, that's fine. You just do a multi-day entry. No big deal. And in the end, it's really just accumulation. How much? And then you know for your property, your farm, what are you receiving? And not having to worry about you know, what some weather station that may be maybe close or maybe far away is receiving.
And it helps us as drought monitor operators know, because if we get a layer that has the droughts observations, condition monitoring, like how wet and how dry the type it is, and I know that if I'm trying to figure out where to put the line, and there if it's widely spaced, the first thing I'll do is go check and see if there's a ground station there to help me figure out where it rained and where it didn't rain. So,
And sometimes National Weather Service will also kind of pull it in to get a sense of when there's been and particularly intense storm. To understand.
Where would you place that? I mean, ideally, what's the ideal placement for?
somewhere without trees.
Ideally in an open space, not near buildings, not near trees. That may or may not be possible. If you're putting it on a fence post or something like that, you want it above the post itself. You don't want the post up here, so you're not blocking or directing rain into it. And I kind of had that in the tutorial of ideal placement locations. They showed one where they had like the rain gauge next to a gutter, you know. It's not used for that either.
They want to.
But ideally, you're not getting blockage from any infrastructure, being a building, a fence, something of that nature. There is a bit of like, if you're in a forested area and that's what the forest floor is getting from the forest side, I'm like, well, that's how much precipitation is falling in the forest because it's not making it to the ground.
This is the general question I have wondered. Having the narrative rain gauges. So since it's getting windier, as we heard earlier, so if I have a big expanse that's in a mountain valley and the rain constantly goes sideways, that's not going
I mean, part of it COBRAS goes with, they're trying to have everyone use this so it's consistent because there is just variation among among measuring devices. So they said, if you're going to use our system, this is the one we want you to use. Because if you use these others, there will be variation based on the unit itself. So at least they can say 2 inches is 2 inches based on that because everyone's using this. But you're right, there will be, it won't be perfect. You have more for me, Austin, since you're the actual expert in this.
Well, I would say a lot of times some of those measurements are like just indexes on themselves.
Yeah.
So like as long as it's windy in a similar way all of the time, then like
the wind always blows down the valleys.
then at least you'll be able to, you know, the number might not be mean that much absolutely, but it might mean more as an index from the whole range of data that collected.
Any other COBRAS questions? Leave this there. Oh, something online?
Oh, how we often understand.
It's not long enough. Understood, Ron. I have more than one, so I can leave a couple here for you if you want to stack them up. You can come pick them up.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the climate hubs, who I work for. So the vision is to have robust and healthy agricultural production and natural resources under increasing climate variability and climate change. Our mission is to develop science-based, region-specific information and technologies for farm, for forest, for rangelands, communities to help enable climate-informed decision-making. Yeah, I don't know why that popped up. There we go. So along that mission, we developed adaptation resources for agriculture responding to changes in climate. This is an online publication as well as a printed publication is now occurring to me that Corey's not here. So in the Palmer NRCS office, there will be this publication if you're more of a tactile person and want to have it in print. It is a PDF, and on that PDF that is online has a bunch of hyperlinks. However, we heard like, nope, folks are going to want to thumb through it. So we have that as well. It just won't get you immediately to the resource, just looking at the printed copy. So those will be available at the NRCS office, and there's 50 of them. So feel free to grab one for you or your friend and share them. And again, probably in 2 weeks, I'll send you all an email with these links and of the various resources we talked about, if that would be helpful for you all. Thanks. So the general layout in this publication, it gives background information on climate. So what has already changed in Alaska in terms of temperature and precipitation, how And then what will change in terms of temperature, what are the projections in terms of what changes will happen and how that will affect agriculture. It provides that background information, and then again, it has all those resources and programs. And then this is the part where the published part will be better. It has a step-by-step worksheet that you can go through for a particular project for your operation to kind of consider like, okay, if I want to work on this project, think about some of the vulnerabilities that were listed, which are relevant to my system, and think about then what strategies that you could consider implementing. So with the game, you got to be super creative, probably experienced, what was it, birds and moose when there were no crops, but ate your crops somehow, or had fungus after it was really dry. These are you know, those are very creative and not realistic. These are more, they start off broad and get more specific, and it's not covering every single opportunity, but it's just trying to say, here are different things to consider. What are the things you can do that can help, say, with soil health? What are the things you can help reduce some of the risks? And then we provide, two examples. And then at the very bottom is the very end of it is a soil climate handbook from NRCS that went through all the different soil information. Okay, sorry, thank you. And then, yeah, my title, farmers constantly adapting to changes. So that's part of like everyday life of a farmer. There's always something different. And so the information is here can help with day to day, but it's really more thinking about climate change, thinking about future changes in climate. What are the things you can start doing to help reduce future risks and prepare? The number of different resources, we have information about climate change, adaptation, as well as a number of farming resources from the USDA, from the university. Next slide. And those are just a few of them. Giving you an idea of the online resources. So with the PDF, all of those blue are hyperlinks, so you can click on them and get you directly to that information. So this way you can get to, you know, let me learn more about NRCS and what they have to offer. Let me learn more about Farm Service Agency or Risk Management Agency and what they have to offer. I was sharing with one of the folks online saying, oh, did you look into the whole farm protection program? Because when you have things like specialty crops or things that are different and aren't on the mainstream cropping system, some of the insurances don't seem as applicable. And so whole farm protection is one of those where like, this is the one to catch everybody, and everybody doing specialty crops, like that was their intention with that one. Okay, next slide, please. So within the book, we have 8 different general strategies. They start off super broad, they get a little more specific, and then we provide some examples, example tactics for you to consider. Next. So strategy 1, sustain fundamental functions of soil and water. So that was mentioned of planting different cover crops, depending on what kind of crops are going to be grown and what the conditions are and how that can help with maintaining and improving soil health. What else can you do in terms of protecting water quality? Maybe not saving all the money. That didn't seem to work out for water quality for one of the games. And then again, matching practices to supply and demand. So when, as was noted online, it doesn't help to do drip irrigation if we already ran out of water. That's not helping us with our supply and demand. Next slide, please. So then just looking at one of the approaches, maintain and improve soil health. And then here's just some of the examples that are listed there. So minimizing disturbance, so either minimal till or no till, things of that nature. Can you put down ground cover? We're working with Kaylee Gash, who's a new scientist here, to do some cover crop studies and residue studies to better understand how to implement those here in this cold climate. So she's going to do some experiments in and around Palmer, as well as in and around Delta Junction, so that we can get more of that specific information, because I know that's the next question, like which one should we use? And that's, I get that's not in hand yet. And then other things that can increase soil organic matter. I also want to note that like farming in Alaska and the soils in Alaska, generally the farms are young. They haven't had decades and decades of farming. And so your soils aren't as, I guess I'll just say, aren't as bad as some places in the lower 48. So you're starting off in a better place. And so we're just suggesting how can you get them even better to improve water holding capacity, to improve soil health, not saying that they're bad now or that you're doing bad practices now, but things that can help improve it. Next slide. NRCS's for soil health principles. Again, cover crops are on 3 of these. And again, maximizing continuous living roots. Yes, I know we're in a cold environment. Those that are working with perennial crops, those just generally already fall into this category. Is there a way to do more intercropping? Is there a way to do, again, these are just kind of pondering and considering. Some have research behind them. A lot of them don't for Alaska. I recognize that. But again, things to consider when thinking about what you can do to improve soil health for your farm. Next slide. Strategies too, reducing existing stressors of crops and livestock, and the approaches being listed here. Again, you're doing many of these apply day to day and aren't necessarily specific to climate change. So there are things that you could consider and like, does this make sense to do now, or is this something I want to think about in the future? Reducing risk from warmer climates. Are there things you can think about, whether it's adjusting your timing of planting or activities on the farm? Managing crops to cope with those warmer conditions as well as livestock. Next slide. So getting into more of the specifics for 3, and again, all of these are fleshed out in the workbook, but managing crops to cope with those warmer conditions, adjusting that timing, avoiding that heat stress, which was already mentioned here, considering when to do that planting, not necessarily heat stress, but trying to get them in at the right time for moisture. And then this is less relevant here, but for more of the interior and other areas with permafrost, considering that how that's going to change with permafrost thaw, and what either damage will happen or new opportunities could be available. And then when thinking about your varieties, looking at those for that longer growing season that are going to be more hardy to the extremes of heat and drought and extra sunshine, and that's going to be things to ponder as the climate continues to warm. Excellent. 4 and 5. So 4 actually wound up focusing a lot about flooding, so not as relevant for this workshop. But again, just thinking about wind damage and if there are things that keep the soil on the ground, the residue on the ground, so less soil is lost due to wind erosion, if that's possible. And then strategy 5 is just remembering we're part of a keeping in mind we're part of a larger landscape, and are there things that you can do to help connect your operation to that larger landscape? So connecting with maintaining and restoring natural ecosystems, promoting biological diversity, that can be really important for your pollinators. And are there other plants in bloom outside of your crop to support the pollinators so that they're available for when your crops are blooming? And then connecting and enhancing with waterways. Strategy 6, thinking of those expected future conditions and managing for those. So is now the time to think about diversifying crops, those livestock or varieties, the breeds, diversifying existing systems with new crop combinations, or even switching commodities completely because conditions will be changing so much, and like thinking about preparing for that. The last 2 kind of go together and somewhat wind up aligning with a lot of the permafrost, but really thinking about the systems and lands with the new climate conditions as well as the infrastructure. So are there going to be, any major events that are going to have negative consequences following disturbance? So permafrost is a big one, flooding, wildfires, just thinking of it from that perspective, which also then connects back to the kind of natural landscape and putting it all in that system. And then jumping into 7 a little more detail. There's a lot of discussion, particularly more interior with land sale of converting more land to agriculture and considering those impacts and like what's going to be available and provide, good opportunities for agriculture, but then recognizing the impacts of that. But then flip side, are there areas that should be removed from production because maybe things have changed to a point that it's not able to either support the current system, or it would have to be a large, change to a new commodity to support that other system. And considering whether removing it from production is maybe the most appropriate. And then of course, thinking of the natural and connecting back to the larger landscape, the ecosystem benefits for that production. So very, very quick review of what's all in there. I didn't go into it all, the soil climate handbook, because really that's outside of my expertise. I would go to Bob. for that, for going into the soil health or NRCS to talk about the soil information, but they went in there and went into the, provided based on the soil surveys, what they're seeing, what the properties of those soils are. That information is available online, but here it's all just been compiled for you together. There more? No. Thank you. Thank you. So I'd be happy and open to chat more and chat about different management strategies, or just even have you all chat with each other. I also realize it's an end of the day that we've been sitting in a room for a long time, so we want to do other things too. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. We'll send follow-up emails, the recording of this, slides, all of the things we shared, but I'll just open it up to questions and also say it's okay if you guys want to add up too. If there's anything from folks online. And something I didn't do at the last meeting. Now what did I do with it? In your folders, if you have them, there are a couple of things that you might be like, why are these in our folders? So I'm going to tell you, there's a flyer that's about managing drought risk on the ranch, and that is a website and resources that are very managing grass specific. And I wanted to put that in there because that's an example of something that was developed in the context of the Great Plains, but we're working with people in different parts of the country to think about how that information could apply and how we could adapt it to other places. So if you were ever talking to somebody and you were like, oh, I wish we had resources like this for Alaska, like, hi, call us. We'd love to work with you on that. And then the other thing that you're going to be like, what is this? Is there's something called a decision calendar, and it's in a 2-page handbook that came out of our work with specialty crop growers in the Midwest. And we wanted to work with specialty crop growers because they get so much less attention when it comes to drought management and monitoring than like in the Midwest corn and soybeans, basically, right? So we work with specialty crop growers to really outline how does drought and drought-related conditions affect different specialty crops throughout the year. What decisions do growers have to make throughout the year to try to do their best to manage those crops? And then could we provide better tools to them to make those decisions at different times during the year? So you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, well, that's for the Midwest. And yes, it doesn't apply to you. But if it's something that you're looking at it and you think, I want to do this I would like this for Alaska. It's work that the NDMC is interested in. Grace and I actually, started to do some research to see how we could adapt some of these things to Alaska. We'd love to work with any of these. So, follow up. We will follow up with you in an email and then you will start. So that's why those are in there. And I didn't see any questions. It went away again, but were there any questions that would pop up on there? No. Okay. Super. Yes.
It's maybe more of a comment than a question, but the last 2 days I was in a different conference. And yesterday at the end, they had a panel on the bipartisan infrastructure law. And a lot of what is funded in there and in the Inflation Reduction Act is exactly the kind of stuff that you have in your strategies, especially strategy 5 and 8. And people are saying, it's so expensive to put in these drip irrigation or other water storage. And it would be really neat to have information for farmers in this area or market farmers on what opportunities there are. Because I know some are through USDA to start funding these things and be ready for.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Assets.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of that, to my understanding, a lot of that money, particularly for those strategies, are going to come through NRCS.
Okay. So
they would be the ones to connect with, and I will also say a lot of those decisions haven't been made yet, from my understanding of because it's some of it is like year money, some of it's 30-year money, so they're trying to plan it out and think about it. Even though we're now at that year mark from when it was first signed, the decisions are how and is still actually happening, as I understand it. But I hear that NRCS is supposed to get a good portion of that funding, and a lot of it was specific to them to help with these things. So I would say first step is just reaching out and saying, I'm interested, what are the opportunities? And then sometimes with some of the agencies, and I feel like this is more familiar with that FSA, once you're on their list, that they email you and send you information as different programming comes out. So it may be just getting connected with them so that once a new option comes available, you get notified of it. And then if it's more related to Chippewa Village, then I would also connect with their tribal liaison, because then they would find the items that are specific to them.
And a comment from Corey, which I think.
Oh,
is
yeah,
related to
Corey
this.
will know, because Corey's our
We
NRCS.
don't know yet how the money will land.
Okay, there you go. So Corey is our NRCS co-lead. She is based out of Oregon. She is the Assistant State Conservationist for Partnerships for NRCS Oregon. So yeah, if she doesn't know, then none of the other states know either. They haven't been informed of how it's coming out. Any other questions? Concerns, comments, feedback?
I'd be interested in the water monitoring. So my 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, no, way better than a 5-gallon bucket. Would you also like a snow gauge? I'm gonna think about that one. I can do that.
Did you see the comment about the snow gauge not being long enough?
Yes, so I'm gonna say. Hey, if it's 2, I think you just have to line them up just right, maybe, and then some duct tape. I mean, there is a hole at the top, so you could screw them into a post and then set them up.
Being nosy for a reason. We can't take the sandwiches. The food with us on the plane. So I was looking for some Ziploc bags in case anyone wants to take.
There's plates.
Take, that's true.
Yeah, I just take my plate.
You want to take?
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I'll be here for a while if you want to chat. Thank you all for attending. I appreciate it.